And hello, everyone. This time we're not lost in time and space compared to 2 weeks ago. So we actually managed to end up here. And we've got ourselves a kind of different topic, but not really, because today we'll touch maybe a little bit upon my trip to Scotland and then look into current state of Waitmans in a sense that Pumba is playing a scrim. I think we're at currently planning for 7th and 8th scrim as Team Poland.
Yeah, there's so many of them. It's crazy.
So what we want to talk about is, at this point, talk about the value of skills of the scrims, what they give you, how to approach it, and answer some of the questions. Because this time, when I was looking at the show questions, we have few of those that can be more lengthy to answer. So that would be nice to touch upon, especially when we cannot find the topic sometimes. And it's really good that the viewers are useful. So not being mean at all. So with all of that said, how are you, Pumba? What's going on your end? Because you said that you were taking a break from 40k after WTC.
Yeah, that's going very fucking well for me. I'm currently captaining 2 scrims, 2 8-man scrims, one again being Team Poland against Team Scotland. We are doing pairings tomorrow. And one being my local team, Krakow Small Brigade, the team that I've captained for a couple of years now, I think. The one that we basically... I captained to the second and then first place at Polish Team Championships, the one that basically taught me how to actually be a team captain. So I'm very excited about that. I'm excited to get back into action, working with those people and on improving that, the overall skill level. Brian, the price isn't much, as she is right, like besides me. So I'm sure she will jump into the view sooner or later. Yeah, so the situation is I'm super into Death Guard right now, and I haven't been this excited to actually play 40k in a long time. And with the meta being overall, oh, there she is, very healthy. I'm actually super excited to test out new armies like Admech and Necrons in the team environments. And this is something that we are basically working on during this scrim that we will be talking about against No Name, team from France, one of the big four, and against Team Scotland as well. So with the current state of the things being pretty healthy and like not everything being solved, something like new armies appearing seems to be quite exciting for me. So I'm very much into that.
And yourself, Nathan?
I've been pretty good. A bit like you guys, it's always after the WTC, I'll take some time off 40k, and then we are addicted to the plastic crack that is playing games. So I just had a singles recently for Leicester GT, but I've been suffering with the plague for the last few weeks. So I do apologize if I cough halfway through this. I'll mute as much as I can. But no, yeah, I think 40k is in a really good place now. We've got 2 new codexes. One's a bit busted, which we'll go into a bit later. But generally, it's always nice when the meta gets shaken up quite a lot.
No, I don't know what you're saying. I also missed Kazakin. They were great.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
It's Metal Kazakin now.
Cool. Yeah, myself, I'm also like quite into 40k lately. I've made some calculations. I'm in last 2 months, I'm currently 30 games in.
Jesus Christ.
Of 40k, including 20 with sisters alone, with the same exact list every single game. So
that's so much Warhammer for you?
Yeah, that's more than I usually play for 2 WTCs. So yeah, I'm currently trying to stay up with what's happening, but at the same time, I'm enjoying it so much that I'm like pre-buying tickets for singles events in Poland. So shit is going wild.
It really is.
So
yeah, like even singles, like I just said, we just said Leicester GT, and I think going into the last round for figuring out who's undefeated, there were 4 different armies on max wins. So it was like 2 Sisters, 2 World Eaters, 2 CSM, 2 Eldar. Like the meta's actually in a pretty decent place right now. Even for singles, which a few months ago wasn't the case.
Yeah, you might be saying that the meta is adapting, but thankfully it will be broken for a month at least soon. So that's what I expect at least. Looking into previous things that were happening, before we get into the scrims and the state of the game, I want to shout out the event that I went to Scotland with my son. First of all, my travel lag. Pumba was crying.
That's incredible. Like, you traveling to events is always hilarious right now, because always shit goes down. Like, every single time shit goes down.
So for those unaware, I went for like 3v3 team event. My car rear shield broke, so I needed to be towed to my and it broke when I was like leaving the parking lot. So good moment to brake, not when you're driving 130 kilometers an hour on a highway. But that was this one. So I fixed my car on Tuesday. Then I flew out on Thursday, but it turns out I missed my flight, so I stayed the whole night at Frankfurt Airport. And there's one thing that I've learned is that they kick you out of the checked-in zones, and then you have to sleep with the homeless, which is less than ideal. So I chose instead to watch Tyler 1 for 7 hours. Which is because I needed something dumb enough to make sure that they do not fall asleep, and I must say it worked. So there is that, and the event was also a blast. I made the worst thing in my life, which was deep fried Mars bar. I thought it was a joke, but it was actually a thing in school. It was so bad, I cannot even describe it. Like, imagine it's buttered in a butter, but then fried in like an oil that was used to fry fish. So you get that slight aftertaste in your Mars bar.
It's the umami flavor of it. That's what you need.
Oh my god, I'm gonna fucking puke. Bro, I don't want any umami fucking flavors in my Mars bar. What the fuck are we talking about? Oh, that's foul.
Yeah, so it was so bad that I couldn't eat for like the next 13 hours. And I took only one bite. And my body said that this has been rejected. We
Scottish
need to have a
diet plan.
discussion. Oh, mate! When we were ordering out food, I asked for 2 veggie sides, but they didn't have any veggies actually when they called us after we made an order. So it was great. And
Just
we
be
also
grateful it
stayed
wasn't
at
fried.
we also stayed at Spoons, sharing our location to the Discord so people can buy us stuff. And I must say there were 2 very nice moments. First of all, my son went to the toilet. We were waiting for the remainder of the guys. So only I sat at the table. And at that point at the table, we had, I think, 6 drinks and 2 shots of stronger liquor. And then came a waiter that was looking at me with those 6 cocktails and 2 shots. And he brought a tray of Bud Light and 6 another shot. Looked at me and said, "Good luck, brother," and just left. And then another waiter came over and said that kitchen is very fucking upset with the amount of mushy peas that were ordered. But
hey, there's your veggies.
But at the same time, guys arrived early enough that we left before any of the food arrived. So now think that there was probably another couple that sat at the table like 30 minutes later and got an order of like 5 kilos of peas.
If we ever have a meetup, ever, anywhere in the world, please make sure they do not serve a deep fried Mars bar, because I will taste that and I will regret it very badly.
No, you won't.
No.
You won't. It's life changing.
Oh my god.
Oh yes,
The worst
I
possible way, I assume.
exactly.
Ugh.
Very much do not recommend. But even though itself was fun, I enjoyed playing Sisters. I enjoyed trying out new ciders. It was cool. I actually played like 3 previous or current Scottish national team players, so it wasn't also like seal clubbing only. I mean, maybe a little bit Ryan, but Ryan, if he listens to it, he will know. But yeah, it was quite fun. Any events of yours, guys? Anything you guys might want to plug in?
Yeah, I went to the same 3-man event, but that was basically, was that 2 weeks ago? Almost 2 weeks ago, right?
Yeah.
And I played CSM there because one of the teams were basically missing a player, so they just literally.
What did your Forge Fiends have?
I don't know what you're talking about. So apparently the guy who was supposed to be playing CSM submitted the list with Forge Fiends with Hades autocans on them,
And
which was
Jaws.
solid. Very
And
enjoyable.
Forge
Most
Fiend
of the
Jaws.
games, four of the games, I fortunately was allowed by my opponents to play them as ectoplasm cousins. One of them I wasn't. Didn't matter too much, fortunately. We did get third, which was very nice. I also learned that CSM are way more broken than I ever thought they were by actually playing them. Especially after jumping, like Death Guard is kind of similar in playstyle to the CSM list that is currently ravaging through the meta. But Death Guard don't really have the delete anything you want button, I would say. You need to oftentimes make sure you have enough to kill the specific targets you want to be dead by the end of your turn. As you need to make deliberate choices and account for the fact that you sometimes will underperform with your units, stuff like that. CSM don't really have that problem. You just basically want something dead and it's gone 90% of the time with just 1 or 2 units maximum, which was very, I don't know. It is a fun list to play. I'm not saying it isn't. Like the CSM are legitimately very fun to play, but it felt real fucking weird. Like I playing this army for the first time ever during like that was the only 5 games I've played with the army, and by like the 4th game, I felt like this army is straight up just can defeat anything in the game if played correctly.
And this reminded me, you talking about Metal Boxes. I unlocked an achievement. I killed the Rhino with 2x5 Zerkers and heroes inside that in a way that only Karn could disembark.
Ow. Unideal. No.
So I've got my achievement on killing the squad inside because it couldn't disembark within 6.
So, I also bought like a shitload of Death Guard. I was not supposed to be starting a new army, and there we are. There was a lot that one guy was selling for dirt cheap, and I just couldn't resist. So now I've got like 4,000 points of Death Guard to paint. No idea when I'm gonna actually do it, but hey, there we are.
Day before the tournament, we both know it.
Possibly, maybe. Most of the time this is how it works.
And you played that Leicester, Nathan?
Yeah, I wanted to take. I haven't had any team events recently. I've got one middle of next month, and then I've got the Pyro Cup in Poland, which we'll probably do a big episode on that afterwards. But no, I went to a singles event, went to Leicester GT. I took NIDS because I felt because they have a codex out already, they still need some testing. I took a very similar list to Caillou's that he took to Worlds. I actually thought the list performed pretty well. I went 4-1. The only game I lost to Eldar 98-97. Because I literally put my whole army into a young Khan, who then survived on 1 wound, who then did 6 wounds back to my Neuro Tyrant, who's on my home objective, kills him, Then the next turn, he draws cards, spends a CP to redraw a card, gets capture enemy outpost, and something else. So we got like 5 points for primary and got 8 points for that card. And he beat me 98-97. I was like, well, fuck this. But I did actually get to play the triple curse list, and actually the Nids are not awful into that. I actually won that game, which I was impressed by. But I think
because you were playing Invasion Fleet with precision.
Yeah, the Carnifexes and the Gene Stealers do help with that quite a lot. But then I got a little bit lucky with some of the like failing some battle shock tests when they needed to, which obviously gives me like the +1 to wound and gives me some other things as well. So, and he stops them doing some strats. So I got a little bit lucky with those things, but that was a bit of a highlight. Other than that, Nids are okay. They just can't kill vehicles for shit. They're just bad. But everything else they can kill. But no, it was a good event otherwise.
Which reminds me of another achievement. My Triumph of St. Catherine over 4 turns of melee won the fight against Incarn, which I was very proud of.
Quite impressive. Yeah.
You only need to pass like 16 4-up saves using your Miracle Dice, then it's fine.
Yeah, once you generate enough Miracle Dice, he's impervious to damage, effectively.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, sure.
Easy.
Fuck off. I've been very impressed with Nids, by the way. I was down on the codex when it's released, and now I'm really impressed with how it performs.
Yeah, I think they are really strong. I think they, in general, when I look at them in terms of Matrix, they feel to some extent similar to Sisters. As an army, you don't really need to pamper and take care of the pairings. They will just be kind of fine with whatever they get.
Yeah, like I felt like I was going into every game going, you know what, this is not favorable for me, but I'm not getting smashed. Like if it's like sliding scale scoring, well, actually, to be honest, I don't feel like I'm losing worse than 7 against. I should be getting at least 7 points out of most things, other than maybe the worst of matchups. But it felt pretty comfortable into most games. It just maybe struggles a bit with mech. So, say for example, that Death Guard list, I would probably feel pretty bad going into that. Can't really kill the mech, can't really charge the infantry, can't really debunk them. I'd feel pretty bad into that, probably.
I agree. But I also like the fact that this codex, especially, I feel like, has such a wide array of builds. Like, you legitimately... The most popular builds in singles are still definitely like the invasion fleets and such, but we've seen good Vanguards list. We've seen the fucking Swarm is amazing in teams, bro. Like very impressed with that.
Yeah.
So overall, big fan of Nids currently.
Now that you mentioned teams and Nids, maybe you want to introduce us to your current scrim that you wanted to talk about.
Sure. So the gist of it is Alexander Sacco, who is currently in chat, as we can see here. By the way, I'm waiting for that shirt to appear at my door.
Another person who's gonna get cursed.
Yes, it's gonna be glorious. Please let me know if you want my shirt as well. Although I've heard that they tend to be given away after the first round of the tournament. After fighting some charges or some shit. Back to the topic. So yeah, Alexander Sacco contacted me to have a scrim of a team scrim instead of a national scrim. I have gathered 8 people that are willing, and we are just doing the same thing as we are doing in the Team Poland scrims, but instead of everybody being considered for their respective national teams, we are just battling each other with the people who are local to us or who are in our teams. The very important thing here is that we are testing a lot of new stuff and very awkward ideas. Especially from our side, we decided not to take CSM at all. We even weren't supposed to be playing Craft Worlds. However, one of the players wasn't able to really make it due to time constraints. So one of the elder players from our local community jumped instead. So we do have elder, but no CSM, for example. So to start it off with, I'm gonna present you some of the ideas that we had for this scrim.
In the meantime, I will touch upon one thing that Pumba mentioned, looking for out there ideas. I think this is like the perfect moment of the meta. That as soon as you know that certain army will not get touched too much, it is great moment to test out new ideas. For example, maybe nowadays playing orcs or dark angels is not really the best idea in your test games, etc., because the codex is very looming and just around the corner. But at the same time, if you know that, for example, Admech Necrons, all those new armies that got codices, or those armies that you know will not get any codex, it is a great moment to test out anything that you have a wildest idea about, because those games will then, for WTC, to some extent matter, because if you have a faction specialist who played with every option in the codex, he will be to some level resistant to the changes that will occur probably in June. So it is like investing in the future with you knowing the armies nowadays. So I would say that it's even bad nowadays if you're playing Eldar or CSM, or at least if you're playing the cookie cutter lists. If you're gonna play Eldar, I'd suggest you play something wacky and wild and just try to find the solution there. But having said that, back to you, Pumba.
Yep, just there we go.
Technical difficulties.
There we go. This is our Admech list, and I'm gonna be straight up honest with you. I have no fucking idea what Admech does. Like Crons, I pretty much am aware of the Wraiths. I am aware.
We have Gitto. You cannot know anything about Crons.
That's also true. Very much true. And this is our Admech player's idea of how this army is supposed to function. He's obviously using the whatchamacallit, the Admech something Skitari cohort stuff. Is it in the, but I think it should be. So I think this is the best detachment from what I've heard and what has been established about it. And the highlight of the list, I believe, are still the Breachers, two blob of Breachers who are actually a decent unit. I've heard people say, and the general vibe around the codex has been that it's meh. This is the Skitari counter cohort, I'm pretty sure.
I think at the top it says that it's an explorator. Exactly. So it's even different, the approach.
Oh, that might be explorative manipul. That's very interesting. Gonna be like straight up honest, I am not familiar with the Admech codex at all. This isn't a faction that I'm willing to jump into, and I feel like some of the ideas here I will just miss. So I'm probably just gonna skip through the list, relay what has been transferred to me by like what's good in the codex, what's not. But we will just test it out and see how it goes. The funny thing about testing so many new armies and like changing your ideas is that your estimation matrices look like fucking junk, because you're not actually estimating on any data, you're estimating on a vibe, which is fucking crazy. So I've just done the pairings with the French team, and I'm very happy with them. I'm sure they are as well. So the gist of it is gonna be we will fucking see. Myself, I'm huge like fan of the Sidonian Dragoons. That's one of the units that I've definitely seen in the codex. Like for 45 points, I think this defensive profile of this unit is absolutely crazy. The only problem for me is how much Bring You Down will give up, like overall.
Yep.
But I I've heard the sterilizers are crazy. I've seen Myson been testing them. I think against Scotland we are bringing like 20 or 30 of them in the Hunter, in the Skitari Hunter cohort or whatever the fuck it is called. But yeah, this is definitely breacher heavy. I hate the priests, just as a rule of thumb. I still hate the unit itself with a passion for their 2+ invulnerable save, which I fondly remember, and the Wrath of Mars at the later stages. So I don't know what they do now. I just hate them on principle.
I know Mython is very high on the birded guys. Like he's literally thinking about bringing at least 45 in his lists.
45?
45 because 30 and then 3 times 5.
Holy fuck. Okay.
But I don't feel qualified at all to talk about Admech. I haven't read the book. Maybe Nathan, you have something to add, something from your own experience or what you guys found so far?
I know absolutely nothing about the new Admech book. I've not done a
Perfect.
deep dive on them yet. I know there was a little bit of talk from what I've heard of. There might be a teams list where you just go screw, bring it down, and you just take as many other like stalkers as possible. The dragoons,
Just
like
stat check someone.
An absolute horde of them. Granted, you probably struggle to set up on the table, but and move around WTC tables. But again, it might just be a stat check list.
Like, we three are very qualified to talk about Admech, as we can see. But Admech is one of those factions which I feel has this thing going for them where oftentimes there isn't many faction specialists, and if there are literally faction specialists. I don't see many people jumping into Admech just in and out very much. So nothing to add here, unfortunately. We'll have more info after we actually test the list extensively. And this is going to be one of the first games with the new codices that we play. Next up, if we are talking about new armies, let's talk about this new about our beautiful Necrons. Very nice this format, by the way, especially the assassination point. So this is more in line of what I've been seeing. This is the also not really on the list. Fucking idiots, bro. But this is the Canoptech thingy, Cryptech thingy. So we've got 2x6 Wraiths. We've got Shard of the Void Dragon. I think that this list all has been already tested against me, and this is one of the suggestions that I've had, that the list can struggle a little bit with opening transfers, which are very prevalent in the meta. I think this model can help with that, because I have played it before. The current Catan have the problem of moving 6 fucking inches, which is basically nothing. And I've seen them popping up in the hyperspace, I think it is called, the jumping around detachment. I think there it will be way more popular, but I think one of them can still prove to be a challenge to shift from like the middle objective or something. And I personally think that the Void Dragon has always been the one Catan where his size is a big problem from him. I think this time his bigger base can actually be a benefit for actually blocking paths for enemy units or like occupying space on an objective. Imotech gives you some CPs. Sheraz is broken. That's my opinion. I think I'm not the only one to have it. But it has been a good unit, and now for the 60 point, this is one of the killiest characters in Necrons. He shoots okay, he fights pretty good, he gives immense buffs, and is tanky as fuck. And of course, we've got Kasrkin, or rather Immortals, with the whole package, with Overlords, with the Plasma Monsters, stuff like this. We have been testing the Night Scythes. The previous iteration of the list had Night Scythes in it. We found them a little bit awkward, especially on WTC, where you cannot overhang the ruins walls with the planes, and you need to come from strategic reserves, so you just have the 6 inches from the border to actually deep strike the plane. or rather set it up, it can be a little bit awkward to actually get into a position where the night side is valuable. I'm thinking some of the like Ghetto, I think, is very high on the night side, so I'm wondering if he will disagree and if he proves it to be incorrect. Yeah, but overall, I like this a lot. The new Overlord is great. What I especially liked in this detachment is the I'm not gonna even try and pronounce that. These are the Forge Word little fly thingies that also Ghetto was using in WTC at WTC. These are beasts. They have melta shots, and they've got infiltration, I believe, or scout, but I think infiltration is the thing. I think they are amazing at they are quite difficult to shift for their points, and in this detachment where they can roll to hit, I think they are very valuable. I think they are a little bit slept upon by other, by the list I've seen popping up. I think these are premium in this detachment especially. Yeah. The list gives up 1 million assassination, which is a problem. And if you can,
I think this is a good. I think this is a good moment to touch a little bit more on the Necrons. I think we already mentioned them at the very beginning, and we called them Castle King 2.0. And I think there's some merit to it. I find that Necrons nowadays seem like one of the best armies for teams, at least on the paper. In theory, like when you look at how tough this list you're showing, there's Ctan,
yep,
and then 2 squads that are nearly unkillable for most opponents. Immortals can die, but the Wraiths are super tanky.
They are incredibly tanky, yes.
And I find they will be a new boogeyman, and I think they will be an army that you need to have in the team in a 5-man, and it will be a very huge problem in singles. Hopefully, it will be addressed in January to some extent, so we just don't have to deal with it too much. But this is a question that we got asked in the questions chat, and I think this is a good moment to answer. So I think just Necrons are really good, and they are really good in a way that I don't like, but different to what they were before. Before, I found Necrons very unpleasant to play against because their mechanics were very feels bad, either for the Necron player because the unit died, or the opponent because they couldn't kill the unit. And nowadays, I think the units will still not die, but at the same time, your opponent will be decimated at times.
I think this codex is very apparent in what's strong in it. Or like there are some of the highlights are very like apparent and visible at the first glance after seeing some lists or seeing some data sheets and abilities. And I don't necessarily like that. Especially compared to Admech, where it's very hard to actually find what this codex is about. I feel like this codex is going to be solved way quicker. That's the first thing. I think it can have that effect on the meta where someone like Manny can just build a list and then win a GT outright in like the next couple of weeks. I think it can definitely happen. If people are not prepared to face it, it will be a struggle.
And yourself, Nathan, how do you feel about it?
Yeah, like I reiterate quite a lot of those points. Whereas the Admech might take a couple of months from now to really establish itself or establish a certain list, either for singles or teams. Yeah, a lot of people looked at the Necron book and went, okay, yeah, it's 2 mortal units that just do a silly amount of mortal wounds. Or even potentially you can take the, let's call them Grey Knights, but Necron version, with all the Satans. When you've got things like just Wraiths in any build are good. They're obviously so much better in the Canoptic version, especially when the characters are also putting D3 wounds on things in a range as well. So, like, you can have, I think, Void Dragon in this list can re-heal 3d3 wounds a turn if he wants to.
Yep, pretty much.
So it's just like, yes, they move 6 inches. Yes, they cry if they get hit by a Night Spinner. But other than that, the list is so tough. When you run in through, like, even some lists that I've seen that say Team England players have posted up, it's like, okay, well, they're this many points, but almost everything in the list has a 4+ invulnerable save. And almost everything is healing wounds. And everything is, some things are doing mortals. Wraiths are a massive stat check unit where, like, even if you run through the dice for Chosen going into them, like Chosen, they put a dent in them, but they don't clear the objective because they gave Wraiths OC2. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So it's like, well, I've got 13 OC. If you kill a couple, I've still got the objective. It's like, okay, well, on 50 mil bases, they have the ability to go in a team's list. I'm going to take all the objectives. What are you going to do about it? And a lot of armies are not going to be able to do enough about it. So they're a bit cookie cutter right now with what they're quite obvious. Certain units are bonkers. So we'll just have to see what changes with them.
Yep. What I'm going to say is the Wraiths I found are not very killy.
No, they're not. No.
They are killing against some specific profiles, but overall they are hitting on force and especially if you're for rerolls. But it's very. This detachment is very interesting for me because it can be fought against. I feel like because how it works and when the control of the objective basically is checked for it. I believe it's end of every single phase. You can kind of you have interaction in how killy are they, basically, is what I'm saying. I think there's definitely a counterplay to them, but it's gonna take some adjusting, especially in the list department. Because as I've said, if you get jumped by 12 Wraiths and you don't have a plan how to deal with them, it's kind of this like incarnate your deployment zone situation, I feel like. Yeah. So that's the Necron list. By the way, I'm gonna mention this just to throw shade. The French didn't take Necrons or Admech for this, even though we waited fucking like 2 full weeks to have their points in, and they decided not to take any. What the fuck, guys?
Are you even surprised at this point?
Hardly, but hey. Okay, what's up next? So these are the new armies. Necrons, obviously good. Admech will see. We are also bringing on none other than probably the worst army in the game. What's your guess for that? As I
know
load it up.
I also looked.
Hey, we've got ourselves some Drukhari. And this is basically us trolling a little bit, I'm gonna say straight up. I don't think they are suited for 8-mans or are any nowhere near good enough, but we really want to test the extent of what the codex lacks or how it can play with the toys it has currently, because I really believe that with some adjustments in the upcoming slate, I think it can really turn out to be very, very strong. The idea with the list, to start us off with, we've got the Beastmaster, which is one of the best units in the codex for me. I think this is straight up amazing. Maybe I would even consider running 2 of these. I love the possibility of the army to just block so many lists that are currently running in the meta. I've played against a similar start of Drukhari against Crazy, who was one of our WTC players. And what we've established is that if he had this unit playing against my death card list with the free Rhinos, 3 PBCs, 3 Knights, blocking just one flank for an entire turn for 105 points with his scout moves and then advance move with a reroll from the token can literally deny your opponent the victory, like the primary points they need to push points. This army can do secondaries extremely well, where its struggles will be primary play. So anything that can deny your opponent primary points, like slowing them down on just one flank of the table, with things like Beastmaster, will be invaluable. We've got a lot of Venoms, we've got one Raider, some Witches. He has been trying to running more of them, a very underwhelming unit, and just more and more shooting. Urien running solo, by the way, very good unit as well. This has the Fugen problem. So basically, even though he's running alone, he has the Phoenix Gem on him. With a 4+ invuln for Feel No Pain, so is a bitch to shift. So basically, like a better loan up, because no loan up, and you still don't want to shoot at me. Another highlight of the codex, I feel like, are the Mandrakes, who have this kind of similar role to the Beastmaster can provide. They are scouted infiltrating unit that you can pick up and put down anywhere. Their shooting is surprisingly good. They quite reliably can put some mortal wounds or like dev wounds onto some targets to plink off those additional wounds of things like vehicles on an objective. Say you hit with some lances, you deal some amount of damage, you often times are left with a vehicle on 2 or 3 wounds on an objective. These can actually provide quite stable damage into that with their devastating wounds and amount of shots. Ravagers, because that's probably the best unit of the codex still, and Scourges, because still one of the highlights of the decks. This list actually shifts vehicles like crazy with all the Scourges, with the Ravagers. It plans to slow opponent down from reaching points, but what it absolutely lacks is a squad that can actually survive on the objective to play primary. So the goal for it is to be a speed bump for opponents' armies, especially if it happens to catch a good army, and just try to score as well as possible as secondaries while slowing opponent down. I think the only thing Drukhari seriously lack to be a good army is some buffs to things like Grotesques or Talos.
Incubi.
Fuck Incubi. And fuck Drazar. He knows what he did. I'm not looking forward to him returning. But yeah, I think if this army gets some points reduction and things like Grotesques or Talos get a little bit better, I think it can actually be very spicy in the future. Right now, it's not amazing. It straight up isn't. There is no like secret tech, but I think many people have shown that it still can play this addition. Even as a worst army in the game, which it probably is, we are in the state of the game where even the worst army in the game can pull some results. Like people like Scary have proven to us that it can even win events, right?
Yeah, but it's kind of weak at differential scoring. So
yes,
the data that you can see in win or lose will be kind of lying to you when you're thinking about this army for teams, because this army will tend to not have many winning matchups. It might scrape a 10-10 where you win by 2-3 victory points, but when you lose, you fucking lose.
Mm-hmm. It can definitely get rushed. If it gets rushed super hard by a very aggressive list, and you don't go first, for example, it can crumble. There is no no way around that. But yeah, definitely if you're looking for something to pick up for 5 mans, don't look at this army still. 8 mans probably still not it, but I think in the future especially, Crazy is just the Dark Elder specialist in our in Krakow, and he has been playing them for a long time. He has been playing Drukhari at the previous WTC. So we decided to go for comfort. We decided to test something out to bring him back to one of his most comfortable armies, because he's been jumping around playing like CSM, World Eaters and stuff. So we wanted to test him out on the army that he really enjoys playing. So that's the Drukhari, a little bit of an off-meta pick. And continue with off-meta picks, or at least not obvious picks. We've got someone returning from Atlanta, which will be Leshu. And Leshu said, the Space Marines are cool, but fuck that. And I'm playing Grey Knights for this one. He has been considering Grey Knights for Atlanta, from what he's been talking in our like Team Poland chats and stuff. But the Atlanta FAQ basically fucked Grey Knights like to the ground. Things like the FAQ that tells you that the Grandmaster
if someone deep strikes within 3 of your unit, you cannot miss and stuff like that.
Exactly.
So it doesn't treat someone
setting up doesn't trigger finishing the movement stuff, and the Grandmaster not letting your units ignore things like -1 damage basically meant that they are quite a bad pick for Atlanta. But since he has been working on some lists, he decided to test them out here. This has the classic package of 3 librarians. One of these is sure to die by its own volition by rolling a 1 and then 5 up. I'm pretty sure this happens every game against Grey Knight, like the Grey Knights play. This is just included in the cost. We've got the Grandmaster, we've got Crow, 2 strike squads, Razorbacks for the... I'm also a CSM, because everybody needs to be a CSM list now, and this is his answer to that. Huge Paladin squad for the Grandmaster to basically bully the middle of the board. Leshu loves his Death Star units, like Deathwing Knights. I think he's very comfortable in having one of those just bully the middle of the board. So this is his choice. The Purifier squad with the Custom Crow is an incredible unit. I've played against one of those at the 3v3 team event, and they are such a pain in the ass if they do strike near you, and then you have to deal with them without actually moving, because Overwatch from these guys is an absolute nightmare. Yeah, overall, my thoughts after playing some Grey Knights, I think they are amazing. Like, legitimately. I think this army is extremely strong.
Yeah, I think in the team setting, I would wager I could even take them in 5s.
Definitely.
I'd agree.
100%.
They are really hard, and they exploit mistakes like crazy. There are a few problems I see with an army like this, is when you're playing a 5-round tournament that's very heavy on your own, on the mental strength. Like, this army can be quite challenging in the long run. So it is an army that I would suggest, if you're giving it to someone, give it to someone who doesn't have any other responsibilities within the team and just has to come to play the game and then can chill between the rounds, etc. But I found it being very strong. The more scrims we've played against Grey Knights, the more games I saw being played against Grey Knights. Myself, I played 3 times against Grey Knights in total. So I feel like this army has a lot of potential, and it is kind of being slept on, and I don't know why, because it feels like it has really good matchup into Eldar.
Mm-hmm.
It is kind of scuffed into CSM, but it depends on your build. Like if you're building it well, it can be decent into CSM.
Actually, I've played this matchup exactly, and what I feel the thing is, if you're not playing Accursed, and I did not have them in my list, it can be a real pain in the fucking ass to screen everything out. The CSM lists don't have a big footprint. They have rhinos, they have some
They have like
possibly
5
stuff-
units on the board.
pretty much like 3 rhinos, a Forge Fiend, like 1 squad of cultists somewhere chilling somewhere in the backfield, for example. But it can be a challenge to effectively screen out places on the board where the grenades can deep strike and bully you with things like the Purifier Squad. So they can slow you down, they can deep strike within 3, then fuck off with the Mist of Damas. They can be a real challenge to play against. I have lost against them 13-7, I believe. And I really felt like with the army that I was playing, if I was playing my second game with CSM, then I needed a lot more reps with my army to even like start thinking about how to counter the grenade specifically. By the way, all the 2-up saves that this army has can be an issue for a lot of things, and people are kind of also sleeping on that. Like the AP has really gone down. So these bodies are way more survivable than they appear at the first glance.
Would you feel in 5-man teams now that not necessarily this list, but say Grey Knights might now struggle with an accursed CSM list and now Necrons? Like, do you feel this is good into triple max rates with the filler pains and the board control that it able to just bully you on primary?
I can see into triple raves, you actually have enough. We can try, and with how many units you sometimes have with the grenades, you can try and gangbang one squad. And it's not super hard because okay, that was interesting chat. Anyway, so I find that of how much of a footprint Braves have, it can be sometimes that you put just enough attacks because the Grenade's profile isn't that bad into Raves, all things considered, right? They have 4 wounds, 5 up feel no pain, so you need 3 attacks to go through to kill a Rave, essentially, because you have damage 2 attacks.
Yeah, but you're wounding on 4s.
And hitting on 3s, so sure, but you can say that one squad in melee kills one Rave. If you have a lot of squads, you can try and force the issue and just gangbang one squad. And on the other hand, obviously the Immortals will absolutely decimate you, but the Raves themselves won't, because their damage profile doesn't do a lot into it.
I mean, they are 2 damage each, so every single save that you fail will hurt. What I feel like currently is that I think it might be very dependent on the exact Necrons build, for example, and how well they can screen themselves out. Because if those Immortals are anywhere on the board and a 3-inch deep strike from like a Purifier squad can get a decent line of sight onto them, they will die. These will melt from the Purifiers. Absolutely 100%. I think this is, as many Grey Knight matchups go, it's very skill intensive. I don't think it's a solved thing. I think it can struggle. I see where you're coming from with the assumption, but I'm not 100% certain.
Yeah, sorry, I wasn't actually saying, I think this loses to. I'm just wondering what you guys think about that potential matchup now in something like a 5s or a 4-man event where you go, actually, is that now 40% to half of my matchups that maybe aren't so great?
I think this army's worst matchup currently is Iron Storm.
Possibly, yes.
Yeah.
It just has enough that Redemptors are untouchable for this army. unless librarians go through with them.
Exactly.
And
You need to
as soon
remember
as
that
librarians go through one of them, they die.
Yes, usually yes. I think this. I agree that this would be Reina's worst matchup. But I'm gonna be honest. I feel like if you just tried this army, like try hard this army, like legitimately learn every matchup. It also has this similar vibe of I cannot see it getting crushed by anything right now. Especially,
and that was the idea of WTC for USA, right?
pretty much. Although the lists were significantly different, the tricks are the same. So I feel like this can still play against almost anything. I find myself being in a spot where judging matchups right now is very difficult, because normally what you're trying to do when like filling out your matrices, at least that's how we do it, is ignore player skill. We try to assume near perfect play, let's say, from both parties. And the more I look at the meta right now, and the more I look at the armies being played right now, the more I come to the conclusion that if the player skill is perfectly equal, the biggest differential is in the mission and like random stuff that happens on the table more than actual matchups.
Yeah, I think it applies to plenty of niche armies or quite difficult armies. I found it really applicable to my games with sisters, for example.
Mm-hmm.
This is an army that I know after playing a game that if my opponent knew how to play it, I should lose it. But I am yet to find a person who knows how to play that game. And I think it will apply in the same way to Grey Knights. And to some extent, I found Nids being the same. People underestimate sometimes what Nids can do. So I think we're truly in a spot where the skill difference can impact nearly any matchup, which I'm super happy about. I don't know. What's your take on it, Nathan?
Yeah, like we're all veterans of it. Player skill does play an important part. Matchups are important. I would say now more than ever in 10th edition, there is a little bit of a which turn and which mission you're playing does seem to factor into some matchups a little bit. That does seem to be able to not only swing a matchup from being like, oh, I got 9 rather than maybe 11. Unfortunately, in some of them, it can be the difference between getting like 13 and 7. Maybe that's a bit exaggerated, but it is a little bit like this could be a draw, but actually he's got last turn and it's the disappearing objectives. He gets 15 on the last turn. It's like, okay, if you deny a little bit, then I beat you by 30 or 20 or primary. I'm already 14-6 up at that point, as long as I keep secondary. You know what I mean? It's one of those, some of the missions are impacting the game a little bit more than it has done in previous times. But yeah, it's player skill is always going to be probably the biggest aspect of it.
Okay, so on this actually, I would like to continue this topic when I share my list, because I have, when thinking about Death Guard lists and generally about the meta right now, I've had this thing when we've just talked about how much the mission impact stuff and some specific roles could impact your final score more than anything. Would you say right now that picking fixed secondaries is a huge benefit, being able to pick fixed secondaries over tactical?
I think
on certain missions, yeah.
Overall, if you prepare a list, because why I want to talk about this is I find myself in a spot. This is one of the iterations I've been running. It's basically an iteration of Liam's list from Worlds. It has some changes, definitely. I definitely like the The plague spitters on some of my crawlers, I find them really amazing, where entropies mainly provide threat more than actual damage. I'm not saying they're bad, but the spitters can actually bully infantry off of objectives and from the walls. I've swapped up one of the brigands for a carnivore. This is because I found in many matchups where, as I've said previously, some of the games I've played with the army can swing depending on how things like hitting my 4-ups with the heavy weapons on the squad. How many mortal wounds will the free grenades deal? Stuff like that. And some of the games I found myself in a spot where I sometimes underperform and I need to basically bolster one of the flanks. This army is not good in changing like the sides where you play the battle. So if one of your flanks, one of the sides of the your board collapses because something went sour, it has a really tough time actually reclaiming that flank. I've tried to fix this by including a carnivore that I tend to play, not always, but I tend to play it from rapid ingress. To, if I have the suspicion that one of the sides of the table can get fucked, I just try to position it in a good spot to counter my opponent almost preemptively, let's say. And it has worked surprisingly well. I think this particular Death Guard list is actually worse against CSM than like the solo Death Guard. I think the Knights are a little bit of a burden in that matchup from what I've tested, because every time a Forge Fiend or basically anything in that list looks at your Knight, it's dead. It's straight up dead, and you need like at least 2 Brigands to take down the Forge Fiend, and sometimes still you will with. Not even
It's very
mentioning the
volatile.
Exactly. Not even mentioning.
And Nathan knows it with his experience with CK, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the problem with Forge Fiends is they sit at 36. You can't engage them back. You can't get melter range. They just pick one off every turn.
Exactly. So I found them bad there, although they improve a lot of matchups elsewhere, and I'm fine with this trade basically. I've reduced the number of Plague Marines, which is it was a difficult choice to make. And instead of one of the squad of Plague Marines that was running without a character, I found them almost every game, instead of them actually doing something useful or doing damage, they are too volatile to do that, and they were basically like OC 2 bodies on an objective. Instead of, because I've gained the 20 points from switching to a carnivore, I've got myself a Soul Typhus running around, or rather deep striking around, working similarly to Grey Knight Librarian. He does some mortal wounds, he can still do an action in your backfield, and maybe threaten with an engine charge. He will not die to chaff. The main problem that I have with the list, which is very obvious to see, just looking at it, it gives up a ton of Bring It Down and Assassination points. And this is a problem if we are trying to push differentials. But I don't know if I can think, I'm still trying, but I don't know if it is worth reducing like the outputs, maybe I would even call it like the reliability of the list, to try to dodge that bump, or like to jump over the bar of me giving up a lot of secondary points. Because this plays primary phenomenal, absolutely incredibly. This army can push primary like some of the best armies in the game. The contagions are a real rule now. Playing around Death Guard on the objectives is a real pain in the ass. And this army is super fun for me to play. But I did find myself when even if I'm like tabling my opponent or winning big, usually it wouldn't still result in a high score because of all the secondary points. Kind of like Tau used to do. With giving up all the secondary points and bringing crisis suits.
Yeah, I think there's like another value of having a plan for fixed, or at least more plans for fixed, except obviously only homers. Because then you get the mission with kill more that you will usually hold 2 objectives on the board. So cleanse out becomes nearly like 18 to 20 if you have units to play cleanse. Because on that mission, a 5-man squad holds 2 objectives. Even 3-man Nurgling squad, I think, perfectly touches 2 objectives.
I believe so, yes.
So there's that, or there's the mission where you leave the middle objective out. And suddenly tactical is way worse in that mission. Because you do not want to have units in the center, so you do not get access to area denial as easily, homers as easily, because you do not want to put units in there, so you do not do it just by itself. You can struggle more with overwhelming force or storm hostile if they bunker up on their objective, etc., etc. So I find that on those missions playing tactical, sometimes if your opponent is better at playing fixed, so for example I was playing Sisters into Eldar, and if he went for fixed, homer behind, but if he decided to bunker his whole army on one side objective, I wouldn't play fixed myself with Homer's Assassinate, I would suddenly have like 1/3 of the card deck be a bot draw.
I know exactly what you mean.
Cards like Capture, Enemy Outpost, etc., which can be even more iffy. So on those missions, I find that you having some plan is even required if you're looking for higher scores.
Yeah, because
Nathan, your opinion on all of it?
Obviously, the easiest answer is if you can build a list that can do both, that is always great. I've always found that because I've been playing Nids quite a lot lately and Dark Eldar quite a lot lately, having the option to be able to be really good at cards is great, because even sometimes if you're only getting a 5-point card, getting that CP when you need CP for things like Nids, that helps so much. But like looking at your list, you say, can I reduce effectiveness but then reduce points? Do you not feel in a sliding cell system you could in certain games go, well, I'm going to sit on 2 objectives, get 40 for primary, and then deny you a lot of secondaries by not giving away my characters, not giving away my vehicles in some ways? Almost like, I know it's very boring, but you could go, well, you got 15 points for secondaries, so I beat you by 20 or whatever.
I definitely can, and I have done so. So this list definitely, even though it gives up a lot of secondaries, it just skews towards the middle, is what it does. Okay. If I win games, I probably don't get more than 15. And I probably, if I'm against a matchup that I'm not very comfortable with, for example, something like CSM isn't the best, but I'm still not losing this matchup horribly. There is no way I'm getting like tabled. And by this virtue, I can still score quite reliably, try to deny my opponent's secondaries.
Like, I know it's obviously going back to our older ETC days. I know it's probably an outdated term now, because you don't really have attackers, defenders anymore. You seem to have more flexible armies. But like, where would you see this role? Sorry, what would you see this list's role for on a team? Is this like, I can go and smash most people, or is this I'm going to put this forward second or third? Do you have a good enough matrix to deal with it?
This is very interesting because it kind of functions like a defender's list, but I found it to have good enough matchups against most teams I come up against for it to be basically too good of an attacker with too good of a matrix to put down as a defender.
Yeah.
Yeah.
it can attack a lot of things. It has a lot of good matchups in the meta.
And it has good matchups into armies that are very common defenders. Because
it's
I
very
find
good.
that Death Guard has kind of good matchup into Sisters and Word Eaters. And both of those armies are a very popular defender role armies.
Yeah.
So it just naturally fits quite well as the natural counter into the current meta. And also into Nit. I find it looks kind of decent into Nits, especially with Brigands.
It does. It absolutely does.
Yeah. I had a small, I played a couple of games with this list just to see what it was about. And I actually did really like it. I did actually enjoy it. The only thing, how have you found the melter guns? I've always just wanted to go, do I just take more flamers?
I've tested the flamers. I've tested the melter guns. And I've come with the conclusion that just 2 shots with 5+ illetals sometimes is more important to me, because I really don't struggle with infantry-like bodies. Anything that's not a vehicle, this squad still will kill. There's no way around that. Sometimes getting that possibility of just one melter coming through, dealing some damage, can swing if I kill that specific heavier target. That's the idea here.
I can see that for sure.
Like, I don't think it's a huge difference, and especially that I'm not running super many Plague Marines in this particular version, because I have been toying with the ideas of running literally 50 or 60 fucking Plague Marines. It's still a possibility. Yeah. And there I can definitely see more of them spamming Flamers. But most of the time, if you're shooting... Especially, I especially like the possibility of them shooting out of the Rhino, where you have 2 slots to fire, two firing spots. So you either go for the melter if you want to shoot for like a very vehicle, or you have Foul Blightspore Flamer and then the Spewer. And one more Flamer would be kind of awkward.
Sure.
So this is a very deliberate choice. I don't think it makes a huge great of difference, but it can. And this army I found is oftentimes about very precisely managing your damage expectations, because it really can flop. Like, every single one of these Preyberg Crawler will probably do around 0 damage, which somehow comes out to killing something.
Yeah, they're like Exorcists. They're like,
exactly.
They didn't do anything. Oh, well, no. Exorcists, when you get enough miracle dice, start to do stuff.
I mean, Exorcists have damage D6 and strength 10.
I've seen them flop enough. All you have to listen to is Brian's opinion on Exorcists. And he'll tell you what he thinks about them.
Yeah, but this list I found sometimes works like death by 100 cuts.
Sure.
More than definitely killing something. Like with CSM, you just put 5 fucking Chosen with the Lord in there, you activate them, it's probably dead. You put a Forge Fiend with 1 CPU roll, everything, it's probably dead. This really doesn't work like that. Most of the time, you have 2 shots with the Brigand, 1 will miss, 1 will wound, and someone passes an invuln. Something like that. But over the time, like the course of the game, you need to adjust for the fact that's gonna happen constantly. So I really like the army. I have the build without knights. I have the build without demons. I think it's all viable. I don't think this army relies on either Chaos Knights or even Nurglings to function. It definitely helps if you have demons, especially. It's a major boon. I don't believe the army absolutely requires them to function. Okay, so that was the quick Death Guard rumblings. Let's go into another off-meta pick. Or I don't think it's off-meta anymore, to be honest. I think it used to be, but now everybody's like, yeah, that's pretty good. Which is Orcs. We've
Played by the 12-year-old that 19.
Bro, don't fucking spoil it. The French don't know. Shut the fuck up. Hey, you are literally spoiling our secret weapon right now. What you doing here? Yeah. So this is the orcs list. We've kind of come away from playing the track spam. We found it doesn't provide enough damage right now, and it can just literally bounce off of everything. Instead, we kind of fell in love with the Squighog boys. They are surprisingly tough. Like they are not unkillable, but they are surprisingly tough. And with enough of them, with all of the squig bombs, something,
Yeah.
they can quite reliably pick off some important, for example, low knobs from backline. I've played enough orcs to know that there are times where you expect them to lose and they just somehow win. And I'm not sure how this really goes, but enough pressure with enough toughness, especially those guys in the Wattern when they get the Inven, and if they have enough pressure on you, they can just close you still in the deployment zone like they used to. And I found this keeps happening to people over and over and over again. Sneakrot not joining the commandos, by the way, just being another infiltration piece to... I think Jacek has been still hurt by the world eaters playing against me and stuff. So he just has this rule that he will never leave home without 10 commandos and a Sneakrot, because screening your lines from world eaters rushing you is just too good to miss. Knobs, by the way. Can we talk about this unit? It's good. And I still see people saying that, I mean, yeah, it's too expensive and shit. I've played orcs now a lot of times, and this is usually the unit that I'm most scared of. This still deletes any marine profile easily, and most other things in the game.
Yeah, by far, knobs are still fantastic. It's very much a list you have to respect everything. Squighog boys are super tough, do good damage. The only problem is they struggle a bit on WTC terrain at times.
Definitely.
Being mounted, just like the worst one these days. Up to their OC, I guess. The flash kit, I think a lot of the orc players are moving back to things like flash kits, just being able to shoot and then Overwatch. Actually put some damage.
Just remember, if you're playing flash gates, note, like a small note to Brian, who didn't know about it, you cannot Overwatch from the fucking truck.
Yeah, you really cannot. Yeah. Not exactly how it works. No. This Badrock plus Flashgate package, I'm like, I completely understand where this is coming from, and every time I play against orcs, I feel like this package is very valuable for my opponent, and this is something that's extremely threatening to anything, especially in Overwatch with all the reels, if you move close to them, with the sustained hits. But sometimes they just flop so bad because of their AP, for example, and I'm still like, I'm not sure. But I can see why orc players are still bound to them, basically, as their best shooting unit, kind of. But yeah, I love this roster. Jacek has been playing orcs for a long time now. Like, since the beginning of the edition, he has hundreds of games, I believe, now. Like, legitimately. And he's been performing incredibly well with them. Like, smashing me. 19-1. So I'm wondering how this will go. He, I believe, is playing against CSM with 3 accursed units. How do you feel that matchup goes? Because I am not sure.
Is it 3 accursed, 3 chosen, 3 legionnaires? Or
I think so.
Yeah.
You
It seems real bad for orcs.
you've run out of trading units because half the CSM stuff has fight on death, so they take half your shit with you. So it's just like, okay, once you've dealt with the accursed, knobs should run through a whole unit. I'd imagine Squig Boys don't run through a whole unit.
Possibly not.
It's just a bit stat checky. Yeah, I would say that's quite difficult. I would put that in a good CSM's favor.
Okay. Because I legitimately had no idea.
I just watched nearly the same matchup being played in one of our scrims with our player testing a cursed cultist spam into orcs, and it ended up being like 18-2 for the CSM. Granted, it was slightly different orc list, but I cannot see like the Nob squad with a boss being that much better at killing accursed than say 20 boys.
I guess with the way the orc player chooses to play is the important aspect. Could he sit and try and play for 5 or 6? Maybe. Did your guy try and play for the win and it went badly because he tried to trade and realized he couldn't? It's one of those. It's how I guess you play the game. You could sit the knobs and just go, these are in a counter assault position all game. It depends.
Yeah, I'm super interested in that particular matchup because the orc keeps surprising me. Like, I know the army, I've played against it a very, very, very many times right now, and it's one of the armies that just keeps surprising me with their results. So, looking forward to it. Am I missing anything? Do I even want to go through the craft rules first? I guess I do because it doesn't have an incarn or Wraithguard because we are not stupid here. By the way, anybody playing 10 Wraithguard and an incarn right now, come on, what are you doing?
I genuinely think playing Graveguard is bad at this point.
It does have incarn. I lied. It doesn't have the Wraithguard anymore. But yeah, the Wraithguard officially bad. That's my hottest take, and I've had it for like a month now. But I hate the Wraithguard right now. Yeah, this version with the Troopmaster. Obviously, you've got Fugan, you've got the Vizark, who is the new.
This is very similar to what Duda was running.
Exactly. This is very much based off Duda's list. I kind of love it. Still, I think Falcons are fucking amazing. I still cannot get over the fact that they are the only support platform, whatever they're
melee
Discord, that
melee.
still fucking works in melee, even though every single other one, like the fucking Razorback, is still the end of the phase. This one is till the end of the turn, because fuck you, that's why, because we are Eldar. What I'm gonna
even
say,
Forge Ward units have it right, but
yes.
Eldar do not.
Yes, because fuck Eldar. What I'm gonna say is there's one unit here that I'm the biggest fan of currently, and if I were to build an Eldar list myself, I would include probably 3 of these, and it is a Warwalker with a Bright Lance. I think currently this unit is incredible into the meta because how effectively it can remove things like rhinos from behind ruins in the first turn. This unit scouts 9 or 8 inches, then moves again, I think 10 inches, and it will probably mostly draw a line of sight to the back of a rhino behind the ruin, and has a very good chance to pop it. I love it. I love it currently with all the rhinos running amok, with all the transports, with big vehicles fighting behind ruins. I think it's huge value for the Eldar player to bring that particular thing and try to pop rhinos as soon as possible. I would include 3, like legitimately. Other than that, I would say traditional. I think it's traditional for Polish meta, in the sense that it has troops.
There's also one thing that I like
about.
One thing I like about Warwalkers nowadays is that they also have OC2, which in transport meta means you can just contest a marker with Warwalker instead of your other chaff.
Correct.
And killing Warwalker is a little bit harder than killing 5-man tough 3 4-up save unit. So
Also, striking scorpions. Anybody? Just some more points
no,
than
that's
the.
trolling. We're getting into trolling territory.
Absolutely not. I mean, they are like few points more than the Rangers, and this is the infiltrating squad basically, which you kind of need still, I think. So if you've got spare points, I feel like swapping the Rangers for the Hawks, for the Scorpions is absolutely fine. Yeah. Traditional Polish elder lists, whatever that means. Okay, and I think I'm done with our lists. I'm not gonna go super deep into the French guys because they are practicing for a tournament, and also
And
they
we're
didn't bring
also
anything
1.5
interesting.
hour in.
Also,
So
I'm gonna highlight one particular list, if I may, from them. Just one single one. It's not gonna be Sako's fucking World Eaters, which are basic as fuck. It's not gonna be Liam's list from Worlds because it's there, and it's not gonna be CSM Oracles. It's spam. It's gonna be this beautiful. Space Wolves list with Gladius Task Force.
yes.
And maybe you can tell me what the fuck is going on in here.
Oh yeah, Nathan, we need you because I didn't understand it either.
Because Jesus Christ, what the fuck? We've got the normal package of we are playing Gladius, so we have the Apothecary with the aggressors. That's fine.
Gives you the advance and charge as well.
There is no Land Raider here for them. There is a captain with the honor vehement, which I still don't know what the fuck is. There's a Logger Grimar on foot.
Okay.
And Ragnar. 2 Rhinos with probably Blood Claws in them. Some of these can probably join in. There's one squad of wolves, a Gladiator Lancer, sure. 2 full Plasma Scepter squads, sure. 1 with the Bolters, 3 men, and 3 scouts, and that's the list.
No whirlwinds, right?
No whirlwinds. No Land Raider for the aggressors.
Yeah, they're not.
No Uriel for
whirlwinds
them to
not
deep
great.
strike because it's Space Wolves.
Yeah.
This is bizarre. And I'm very excited to see it being played. Because I love this moment when I look at the Space Marines list and I'm like, what the fuck?
Can Logan join aggressors?
It's a good question. Let's actually check. Let's you guys explain to me what the fuck is going on here.
Guess as good as mine. Blood Claws are very choppy. Advance and charge out of Rhinos is the meta these days.
Yep. I get the Blood Claws in Rhino's part.
Yep.
I like one of them.
Inceptors are a staple in whatever you play.
Of course.
Everyone's
And you've got
play
3 scout squads because missions and stuff, so it plays missions very well. Logan Grimnar, without the sleigh, it can not join anything else than Relic Terminators, Terminator Squad, or Wolfguard Terminators. It cannot join the claws. It's running solo.
And he is in Terminator armor. So
he is in Terminator armor. He has Deep
he
Strike, of course.
Yeah.
And I believe he's there just for the Wa. Because he has the Wa ability, basically. Which means once per battle in the charge phase you activate it, and then you can reroll the charge rolls, and you've got the full rerolls to hit in melee, I believe. So I think that's that. I think he's just there for the Wa.
Which makes sense, I guess. The turn that you have advance and charge in your whole army, you can just go push. Which I guess, and you double up the bonuses with the rerolls. Things.
It's very inspiring.
It's definitely interesting. I'd have to know more about the ins and outs. It's interesting that I would say probably Black Templars have some better options.
Right? It kind of feels like Black Templars, but a little worse. It has
Like,
this
it's hard.
similar vibe.
Like the fight first guys with sword brethren in impulses just are so tough not to take these days. But at least it's different, and they are trying something.
Yeah. So that's my highlight for their lists. Other than that, kind of normal stuff. Yeah.
I wonder if Blood Claws that turn can put down a cursed unit.
Oh,
That's a lot of attacks.
that's a lot of attacks. Yeah, because they've got like special abilities, which is like +1 attack and strength after the charge. So they've got like, let's see, 4 attacks each with the chainswords, just the chainswords. 4 rerolls, probably lethals from the lieutenant. Sure.
Maybe.
+1 to wound from the lance still. Yeah. I'm gonna be very interested to see it played. Yeah, and I think that's pretty much it from our Scream. I would just like to mention that overall, I feel like if you are trying to get better in Teams 40k, just fucking playing Teams 40k is the best way still. Like, we can talk all we want. We can do these episodes every 2 weeks. But if you have the opportunity and the will, do these kind of scrims. These don't cost you literally anything except your time. And this is the way that you improve your team game the most.
And also
it's extremely valuable for captains. It's extremely valuable for doing pairings, for filling out matrix. It literally step by step compounds every aspect of like going to WTC or any other team tournament.
And to give a plug, if you're going to a team event that you don't know yet how to approach, I wrote an article that I would not humbly say it's quite good for you if you're looking for your first team event.
It's amazing.
And it applies as well for 5s as for 8s, but it's written for 5s specifically. So you can just look at articles on our StatCheck webpage, and there's one that mentions how to set up a 5-man team based on our Alpine Cup adventure last year.
Yeah, so from my perspective, this kind of Scream opportunity, especially right now where the meta is kind of healthy, but also changes right now a little bit with the new codexes, this is the best possible way to test ideas out. Be honest with everybody. Like,
you can try out so many armies.
You can try out very wacky ideas. Be honest with what your goals are. Be honest with the opposing team what your goals are. Are you trying to win? Are you preparing for an event? Do you want to test a new codex, new lists out, like we did, for example, right? Be honest with each other and try to organize these types of things. There are a lot of teams right now throughout the world, literally. I know in the US, we've got the Champions Cup coming up. You've got literally tens of teams, dozens of teams right now signed up for it. So there is clear interest in Teams 40K. So you've tried to organize through Discords and stuff, try to find people to do these kinds of scrims with you. You don't need to be a national team member to do so. And it's going to benefit all of you. If you're a player, if you're a captain, if you just want to start doing this stuff, this is literally the hands-on experience. You can do it through TTS. If you've got enough local players, you can do them locally or just go to another city for like a weekend instead of going for a tournament, for example. Because I'm going to be honest, this kind of Scream will teach us way more than going to like 2 or 3 tournaments will. It's just
and that is mostly because you actually get to talk with your other teammates and understand different approaches and how games will develop when you talk about estimations, etc. So the benefit is that you're not only thinking about your army, you're thinking about the game as a whole. So it makes it easier for you to focus and develop because you are kind of forced into it.
Exactly. So huge thanks to the French guys, to the no-name team or no skill team. Shade, it must be thrown. But yeah, I'm super excited for this. I'm doing the Team Scotland pairings tomorrow as well. We've got another Admech and Necron lists in that, and yeah, that's basically the end of that topic.
And Nathan, now because we already spoiled this on the Polish team end, that we're 7th. I think we're just preparing for 7th and 8th international scrim. How are you guys approaching this topic? Because you guys are very well known as the singles nation. So have you guys tried something specific for this time?
Yeah, there's loads of scrims going on at the moment. Let me just pull up my Discord. I think we've got scrims with Northern Ireland. We've got scrims with Ireland, scrims with Netherlands. And I think we've got scrims with another Northern Ireland team. So we're actually getting a lot more in that way. We still obviously do a lot of singles. We have a lot of big singles events here. But yeah, the scrims are much more prominent now. It's for anything teams related. We have a couple of teams events coming up. One of our coaches, Ed, is just set up, I think it's called Crazy War Boss. He's just set up a new tournament events running company who are going to be doing multiple singles and team events almost monthly now out of Glasshammer Games in Telford, Birmingham area, which will all go towards Team England funding as well. So there'll be a lot of, at least even to smaller. I think I've got one in the middle of next month, which is, I think there's 12 4-man teams. Just even those monthly are just good. Running up to ITT and then Pyro Cup in February.
Pyro Cup is going to be hype as fuck, by the way. I'm so
And
excited.
I can't wait.
This is going to be legitimately awesome. For anybody that isn't aware, Pyro Cup is going to happen end of February, middle of February.
23rd till 25th.
And it's going to be an international Scream event, similar to last year, but this time happening in February. And we've got England, we've got USA coming. It's going to be a blast.
So France, Belgium, Scotland, Netherlands, and 2 Polish teams as well.
Yes, it's going to also be a great fucking party. Because
the whole event is held in one hotel where you have everything included. So you just need to come over, play in it, eat all the meals in it, and you get some drinks in the entry fee as well. So
yeah, it's going to be such a blast. But I've got this one more thought before we close out.
Before we get into show questions.
Exactly. For me, I treat going to events, like singles events, I would like to compare that to like playing solo queue in League or any other game, like playing your solo ladder, for example. That would be for me going to a singles event, for example, if we are talking about teams. And in a similar fashion, if you want to get better in team play, what you do is do team play in the same way as like League teams are doing or Dota teams are doing. They scream constantly against each other. And as the scene broadens up and we've got more of these people who just are interested in getting better in teams, I feel like this is the way of the future. And it's very visible where like it clearly paid off for us in the sense of like our national team. And I think it can benefit every single team in the world, even if you're not national WTC team. It can be you just as you want to go to American Team Championships, Champions Cup, anything like that. So get involved.
Yeah, you almost have to view singles now as this weekend you're getting an extra 5 to 7 reps of your army. And it's just like playing practice games at home.
Yeah, it's like solo queue. Yeah, kind of. Okay.
Yeah.
That's it for the topic. Show questions.
Getting into show questions. So small plug before, if you're interested in supporting us, etc., there's a Patreon with stat check. You can chime in there. Then you will get access to the Discord, where on the Discord you can answer questions that we'll respond to unless we forget, right, Pumba? So we'll try to make sure that we respond. And if you have any ideas for the future shows, which I already had 2 people write to me private messages, we'll happily get some ideas, because how much you can talk about another 8v8 scrim. So
Yep.
you're looking
By the way,
like
you fucking throwing shade at me after missing a show 2 weeks ago.
Yes, exactly.
It's a little bit fucking
Exactly.
stepping your boundaries right there, my boy.
No. I can still mute you and kick you out of this call. Anyway, so first question by Sam Lemin. Listening to the 6++ guys about playing with intent, and Tony Chu talked about during Team Poland scrims, many of the Polish lads will, against their own detriment, not do takebacks for themselves, but allow it for their opponents. What is the reasoning behind this? Pumba.
So, actually, this is one of the topics that Duda and Gito discussed at one of our Patreon streams that we sometimes do. If you are Polish, for now at least, we do have a Patronite. If you want to support the Polish national team, you can find the Discord, small plug, in our Facebook page, Team Poland for the K. And I feel like this is because sometimes learning by actual mistakes is the best way to actually memorize something. Unless you get burned specifically by something very hard, sometimes you won't remember it. And oftentimes in a game of 40k, we still play by instincts. Like, we can practice and deduce and calculate as much as we want, but a big part of playing 40k still is kind of instincts. And getting burned by something is, for some people, the way to get that into like their instinct to avoid certain situation. Like, it will trigger their memory from, this fucked me last time, for example, so I will never repeat this mistake again. So this is what I would see this as a reason to not allow taybacks in like a practice games or a scrim game. Because sometimes you just need to get burned to have that thing memorized and like trigger that even memory of it fucking up your score in a certain game that matters to you in some way, like a scrim can. So that would be my answer for that.
Anything to add, Nathan?
Nah, hit the nail on the head. Yeah, sometimes you've just got to burn it into yourself that you fucked up and you live with the consequences. To style attitude towards it.
Because this is literally the way to trigger it when you need it to win an actual game.
And sometimes in practice games, you can almost do the mistake on purpose, where you just go, I can sit here for these mana points probably, but fuck it, let's see what happens if I go full aggro. Oh, I got absolutely bombed. Okay, fine, I never do that again.
Oh, yeah, I actually chime in. I do that a lot. When I test armies, especially for the first time, you need to remove your ego from those games oftentimes, 100%. And I do it a lot. I oftentimes...
That's what we try to force on our players.
Yeah. But for example, I've actually talked with you about this, Typhus, a lot. When you practice a new army, for example, or Myson practices a new army, you tend to spend a lot of like theory and theory crafting and calculating outputs and stuff. Whereas my approach usually is to grab an army, put it on the table 5 fucking times, rush my opponent down, get absolutely slaughtered most of the time, test the absolute extent of stupidity I can pull off with the army, and then I try to adjust. Instead of like actually calculating each output and stuff, I oftentimes just do a lot of stupid mistakes, which I'm very much aware I'm doing, to then try to correct them and find the extents, limits of the army.
Yeah. The next question. With Admech and Necrons having now dropped, what is the general approach of breaking down these new codices and testing concepts? Nathan.
Well, Necrons seem to be a little bit easier, but almost with that, you can go anything that seems absolutely ridiculous, you can almost put to one side a little bit and say, look, these are probably going to get updated. From that point, explore the rest of the book. Say, for example, Tony Chu, when he looks at an army, a little bit like what we were just talking about, is he goes, right, here's what I think is the meta list, or here's what I think is really, really good. I'm going to go play every other unit in the codex first. Yeah, half of them are going to be jank, half of them are going to be awful, half of them, they might have surprised him a little bit. He might find a use in them. But at least he knows when he then comes towards the WTC that he goes, okay, I played everything in this book now. These were really, really good. This was really shit at this. So he stops taking those certain things. So when it comes to, the Admech book, probably more, that's just going to be trial and error. They might be a little bit more like, say, Tyranids, where they've got loads of pretty decent options. So it's going to be more, how does it fit into the meta? Does the meta become more vehicles of transports? Does the meta become more hordes? Does the meta become this, that, and the other? So it might be a case of you can start tweaking your Admech or Necrons towards dealing with those. That's usually the starting point. Obviously, sometimes they just have bonkers armies straight out the gate, which we have a little bit with Necrons right now.
Yep. What I would add to that is when you are building lists with even a new army, try to not make the list in vacuum, so to say. Don't just look at the internal balance of the codex. Think how this army is supposed to function on the actual table against actual meta lists. As like, I need some units to do this particular task, like open rhinos. Try to find yourself a unit that does this task. Don't just pick units and put them into lists because they seem good on paper. They have good data sheets, such and such. When you try to build a list, even with a new codex, try to find roles that you need to be fulfilled.
Oh, I'll add another thing. Also, don't forget, the game is about points. Is your list good enough at holding primary? Is your list good enough to be able to do fixed or cards?
Mm-hmm.
Can you build a list that's very, very good at cards? Because that might just carry you through half your games. Like, say, the new Necron detachment, which is basically Grey Knights now, could just be one of those. If the dumb stuff gets penalized, then it might be a case of this army scores phenomenally well. You know, that kind of figure out how you're going to figure out where your points are coming from.
Exactly. Basically, have a game plan when building a list. Don't just put units in because they seem good.
Yeah.
And specifically, I would say, when you're thinking about team concept, start thinking what armies your army might be good into. So it's just what you guys said, but you can even apply it to wider team. Realize what's common in the meta, but what will be common in the team. So where can I slightly tailor my list in a way that it will be even better for my team? Because we struggle, for example, with specific army, so I can make sure that my army is a little bit better into that faction. So there's that level. And third question from Sam, because he loves to ask questions. With a new data slate on the horizon, will you start modifying your lists in anticipation of future changes, or not play things which are expected to get nerfed adjusted? And I'll answer this one, because I think we already answered it throughout this podcast to some extent. When we are talking about, for example, the scrims, that we try to not take CSM, try not to take Eldar, or if we're taking Eldar, we're playing some wacky stuff. And this is something that I spoke about at the very beginning of the episode. I also think this is, you should be thinking about WTC at this point if you're not singles focused player, because now is the time to test all those things, like you also mentioned, Nathan, with Chewie playing all the weird stuff, right? All of it translates. So I think this is the moment to not get the most reps with the most optimal list, because you will be getting a lot of those reps in June, July, now it's time for you to figure out maybe that one niche unit has actually a use that it will be better, because when the data slates and the new mission pack drops in June, then we will already have that knowledge before.
I also, to add to that, think that just right now, just playing the best units from the army is a little bit of a handicap, actually. If we look at the Eldari, if we look at the CSM, just sticking to the baseline kind of offers your opponent enough practice into that archetype, let's say, whereas throwing something in that's more out there maybe is an additional idea. This is basically the best time to test out ideas, and some of them might be just good enough to stick around. Like Liam's list, for example, an LGT CSM list that everybody plays now, is not be or end all, and there are still variations and specific units that can work a little bit be better for you or improve specific matchups. As for us, as I've said, the best example would be actually testing out Drukhari, because we see potential that the army can provide if it gets adjusted in the future. And it's very valuable to recognize which units do which roles the best right now, before it gets super hot and everybody's like swarming it, if it's actually good, right?
And then Preston asks, to Sam's third point, on a high level, how do you deal with a change and a shifting meta? Nathan, this is a very loaded question. So what's your take on it?
It's difficult, because it's difficult where are you trying to preempt a meta change, or are you trying to deal with it when it comes out? Because sometimes with how fast it does shift these days, by the time something has reached its apex and won all its tournaments and you figure out a way to counter it, the game changes again. So it's very difficult to counter meta chasing at the moment, unfortunately. Something they'll probably try and help fix. I think if you can try and see what, like, something we've talked about throughout this podcast quite a lot is rhinos in terrain, digging rhinos out, or digging transports out of terrain pieces. That's not descriptive of any one army. That's like 4, 5, 6 in the meta right now. So you probably know you need to deal with that. There's quite a lot of infantry assault units coming out of those units. Do you have enough units to trade? If you are going to try and go toe-to-toe on objectives and things like that. Yeah, it's very difficult to predict, change your army for meta these days. But there's so much information now that it probably just takes a lot of more homework. Look at the meta reports, look at the what's doing well, look at the, not only, I think, don't get necessarily stuck with the 45 to 55% win rates. Look at things like event wins. So like at the moment, it's been like CSM's on 9, Eldar's on 9, Death Guard's on 6, that kind of thing, where actually look at the 4-0 armies, because they're the ones that you're actually going to have to beat to probably get into the 5-0 bracket. Look at the things that are winning events. That's probably where you have to look at. Start looking at stats. Start talking to good players who are winning events, things like that. I think that's where you have to kind of get to.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Am I still here?
Yeah.
To add to that, I feel like the only real answer is play a lot of fucking games. If meta changes, I don't think predicting meta change is particularly possible. I think recognizing meta trends is very valuable. So as Nathan said, things like a lot of transports are right now prevalent. So if meta changes suddenly, you would like to find out like what's the trend. Are like vehicles good? Is infantry good? Are we playing MSU? Are Death Stars, for example, prevalent, right? So you try to find those big trends and then try to answer them. But to do so, you need to follow a lot of tournaments, you need to see a lot of lists, and you need to play yourself a lot and test your ideas out. I don't think there's a particular trick, unfortunately, to like adjust very fast. Just play a lot of games.
And the last question.
Not the
As
last
someone
question. I've got one more. I will actually jump into it. My cat's name is Tiramisu, but she goes by Misu, and she's an absolute fucking devil, and also very nice and cool. Thank you.
Thank you for that interruption. As someone new to
So,
teams,
short
what's the
question.
best way to try and break down a team's performance without overcomplicating things and making it a valuable learning process for the whole team? And I will once again ask Nathan, because me and Pumba tend to hog the fucking mic. So,
Amen.
So, I guess kind of the standard that we look at for Team England a lot of the time is the easiest way is to kind of go off your matrix. Did you reasonably secure the color points? Sorry, I should say quickly. Matrices, we normally break them down into colors. Colors equal certain points that you think you're going to get in those matchups. You break up the 20-0 system roughly that way. We normally base it off a performance of how good were you running up to an event? Were you easy to work with? Were you good at developing lists? Were you good at being creative? Did you constantly tweak your lists? How good were you with feedback? When it comes to the actual how well the team did at the event, hitting your matrix, making sure your matrix is right. There's nothing worse than somebody going, oh yeah, I get 15-5 against that, and then they come back with 3 points. Because you've obviously either not played the game, not done your homework, or the matchup is just not how you think it should go. Or you've just either had a really bad performance, but normally you shouldn't be putting 15-5 if you then get 3, because dice doesn't do that much points. Overall, yeah, that's kind of how I judge a performance for a team. Like, because sometimes you can't necessarily judge a team performance by just winning the event. I think we've had it before where if the competition of the event is not super high, we've won the event, but then not dealt with potential issues you've actually had on the team going, actually, that person didn't do that well. That guy's missed his matrix quite a lot. But it doesn't matter because you got the results. Like, you have to be super critical. Even if you won the round 100-60, you go, oh, cool, we got a triple-digit score. Yeah, but 2 people had really bad performances. But you almost discount those sometimes because you're like, I won the round, which is you've just got to be critical at all times. And it's also just players need to take it upon themselves to be critical of themselves, be like introspective about how their actual performance went.
Yeah, just a quick addition to that. If someone is quite new to teams, you need to take it as just kind of also learning completely new skill compared to singles. So if you're used to be constantly winning in, for example, singles environment, then teams is still quite different, and you will need to learn that skill like almost from nothing sometimes. So do expect to sometimes lose, of course. This kind of obvious, but sometimes it's worth reminding people of that. And the second part is make sure everybody on the team aligns their goals with each other. Are you there to practice? For example, if you are into an event, are you there to practice your lists? Are you there to win? Are you there to get better at the game? Are you there to have beers and fun? Which also is fine, by the way. A lot of team events for many, many fucking teams is just drinking a lot of fucking beers with your teammates, which is a lot of fun. So if you want to get better, do be critical, like towards yourself and each other, and understand that somebody is gonna fuck up sometime, and it's gonna pull your fucking team score down, and you need to accept that from both sides. Like, this person needs to accept that he fucked up, for example, and like deal with that. Just think why that happened, and also other people need to accept, like, don't jump onto him, for example, and not criticize it for it. It's any team sport works kind of the same, but it's, I think, worth reminding people that it's still a team, very much a team game, which requires a little bit of a different curve, or like social curve, than just singles events.
And that's all of the questions for today, because I do not see any other of them, and the ones on the YouTube chat are rather answered or not on the topic. Because, for example, I have no clue how Necrons deal with ACDC and what does it mean. So, anything to add, boys, before we leave this 2-hour episode?
No, it's pretty comprehensive.
I'm good.
Are you though? Like,
Yes. Look, I have a cat.
I mean, you've got the cat, so
She's
there's
also
that.
insane right now. It's the crazy.
Okay, then thank you very much for joining us for another long episode. It just happens to, when you start talking about in-depth stuff, that it takes a lot of time. So thank you. And as I said during the episode, if you want to support what we do and join in a little bit more into conversations and ask those questions that we're comprehensive answering now, join the Patreon, get on the Discord. You get access to events that we organize, and you can also talk to us a little bit, because we try to answer all the questions we get there. So,
And see
having
you in 2 weeks.
said all of that,
Yep. See you in 2 weeks
I
in
think-
special Christmas episode.
yeah, I think we'll do like a year recap.
Yep.
Yeah,
That's
that'd be
good. So we'll look for someone to join us as another guest. So if you have an idea or you feel qualified, you might ask us, and we might as well just grab you for that one. But having said that, have a nice evening, boys, and see you in 2 weeks.
Bye.
Well,